morning. This is Focus 94.3 FM. I am Linda Ayesu, and I'm here with Professor Samuel Adu-Gyamfi, a history lecturer at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Now, our interview focus Ghana from the perspective of the youth. We are in the Heritage Month, and yes, we are talking about the Ghanaian culture. Without much ado, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
This is Focus 94.3 FM. Yes, sir, we are talking about Ghana from the perspective of the youth, in the Ghanaian culture. And I want to ask that, is the Ghanaian culture fully practiced by the youth? Do you think the youth, we are doing justice to the Ghanaian culture now?
It's an interesting question. You ask yourself whether the youth really is following suit in terms of the Ghanaian culture. The Ghanaian culture is an amalgam of many things. You are looking at different ethnicities coming together to form a nation state, and therefore you find the Akan culture likely, you find the cultures of those from the north and the upper regions, you find those even in the broader bracket of the Akans, you have those at the coastal regions, and you find those within the middle belt and all. So fundamentally, you are looking at an amalgam of different ethnicities with different cultures and nuances coming together. So it's difficult to say that there's a Ghanaian culture in the sense of that which is seen in the various ethnicities. However, the question is whether we are really closer to our ethnic backgrounds and how we've been able to imbibe those aspects of our cultures from our respective ethnicities within the nation state called Ghana. It's a challenge because you have seen cosmopolitanism, you have seen rural-urban migration, you have seen the element of what we call social change, Christianity, Islam, and other outside influence. So Judeo-Christianity, Islam and all that, shaping it, Western education shaping our society. And what these elements have done is that they have pushed what we call social change. And that in itself has also influenced the attitude of Ghanaians over time. The other things which also shaped the Ghanaian society is film. And cinema from the outside world. The India movies, the American movies, the Chinese movies. So different cultures have seeped through from the film industry, television, media, and all. Today we have what we call social media. So amalgam of ideas filtering through our society has shaped the notion of how we see our Ghanaians, for that matter, our culture. And fundamentally, we know that culture is the way of life of a group of people.
Yes, sir. So please let me ask this question. So with what you have said and the Western movies and so does that mean the youth are fully interested in that rather than being interested in or everything that concerns Ghanaian or Ghana?
Yeah, but I did not finish with that, but I wanted to anchor the position I had taken. So culture is dynamic and culture is shaped by different forces. That's what I'm trying to say. And through, cross-pollination of ideas within the territory we call Ghana, you have seen that it is not only, for example, the Akans that eat fufu, different ethnicities eat fufu. Akpele is not only associated with the Eves alone. Today, across board, you see that being, a delicacy for all. Fante, Eto, cuts across, right, today. What we call fum amongst the hunters and the enzimers cut across. So what I'm trying to say is that even internally, we've seen shared culture, right? But social change over time has shaped so many things, even including the medicines we use. We used to rely on herbal medicines. But today, our interest is in Western forms of medicines, right? So different changes over time. What I'm trying to reinforce is that even though you have Ghanaians being Ghanaians, their culture has been shaped over time by outsider influences. And generically, all Ghanaians have been influenced by the outsiders and by Christianity, Islam, and other social change forces, right? Or forces of social change. So it is not only a youth question, but it's also an adult question. However, when it comes to the youth, social media, for example, has become a major changing factor and force. It has not only shaped culture, it has shaped politics and other, spheres of our society. So fundamentally, the youth is oscillating between what is Ghanaianness and what is outside influence. And the outside influence, to me, seem to be more. I'll give you an example. We have what we call the baggy jeans, where the young men show us their native boxer shorts. All over in Kenya, you see that the young men showing us their native boxer shorts, and it seems to me that the ladies like it these days when the young men show their native boxer shorts. But in America, the African Americans who are largely in prison, especially their male counterparts, when they go to prison, they wear these prison dresses. They are handcuffed by their hands, and their feet is also chained, and their dresses hang as saggy something. When they leave the prison, they dress to mimic, right, what happened to them in the prison as a form of protest. The youth in Ghana is copying this culture, right, and it has taken a fashion trend in the US, but our youth are copying this blindly. They are doing so because they think it is fashion.
Meaning they are not doing justice to the Ghanaian culture.
You look at Kabasroto, right?
Yes.
Which is not fundamentally Ghanaian, but European fabrics and others being sewn, right, during the colonial period, evolving from the coastal regions up to the forest belt and all that. The kind of food we eat, right?
Yes.
Some of them were imported from Europe and the New World and elsewhere. So cross-pollination of ideas, distribution of food across the Atlantic, and some coming also from the outside world. So this is the state of the world. But the Ghanaian youth today is an amalgam of many things. The Ghanaian youth today, when you press the Ghanaian youth, you see Ghanaian culture, you see some bit of European culture, you see some bit of North American culture, you see some Asian culture, and all. So that is the picture of the Ghanaian youth. And I think it's also because of the globalized world and internet technology, social media, and all the other factors.
Okay, sir, we are in the Heritage Month, yes, March. Have you personally noticed the involvement of the Ghanaian youth in the celebration of this Heritage Month?
I'm not too sure whether we have really been able to assimilate what we call the Ghanaian March, right?
Okay,
or the Heritage March.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we have really assimilated that. I'm not sure we've been able to comprehend it to the extent of making it a subject to discuss and engage both at the institutional level and also at the national level. I think the media is leading the front in this regard. And I see the programming in several of these radio and television stations, even on the social media platform for those who are doing podcasting and all that, trying to push that. But I think it should. I think we have not been vociferous enough. We need to drive it in such a way that during the month of March, all Ghanaians, for example, will take to dressing to exhibit their Africanness and Ghanaianness. So that we have our batakari, we have our kente, we have our different forms of dresses depicting our Ghanaianness. You begin to take to how we want to live as Ghanaians, how we need to exhibit our Ghanaianness, both in the sense of how we even acquire our knowledge, how we believe in our existence as a people, how we engage in the sense of trade, how we engage ourselves in terms of marriage, how we engage ourselves in terms of contracting different levels of relationships and layers of relationships. So in this month, there should be some layers of interactions that adds to our Ghanaianness and showcase our Ghanaianness. I think it should be a month we have more festivals or activities going on to exhibit or to mimic Ghanaian festivals, right? Through the food we eat, through derbes and all that. So I think that stakeholders like our politicians, the Ministry of Tourism, chieftaincy, should collaborate.
And we should do better.
Right? Collaborate. These agencies and institutions should be able to collaborate with the chieftaincy institution, collaborate with our queen mothers, and collaborate with institutions of learning from the basic school through the second cycle institutions up to the tertiary institutions. There should be a certain pragmatic approach to ensure that the month is celebrated in such a way that we emphasize our culture. Maybe we can pull in the whole chocolate day idea, which was put out by President Kofo. It's a month we make sense of our chocolate. It's a month we make sense of our dresses. It's a month we even make sense of our sports and games, right? Look, Ampe is not at the Olympic Games today. Why don't we have Ampe as part of the Olympic Games? These Europeans, even when they cough and they give it to them, they want to take it to the Olympic Games. But our Ampe is not there. So we need to begin to rationalize some of these things and put them on the pedestal during the month of March. Highlight them, blow them to, different proportions. And not only that, make economic sense out of that. Let it be the month people, Africans in the diaspora, different groups and different people would want to come to our shores because it is the Heritage Month in Ghana, where culture is elevated above the status quo.
Yes, I would have asked that the Heritage Month, the involvement is being talked about already, and the excitement, yes, but I still want to ask, the excitement, let me say the Independence Day on the 6th of March, how the excitement in your generation and in this generation can it be compared on any scale, on any basis, or it's still the same? Maybe those times or during your time when we mention Independence Day, the excitement, is it the same as today?
You are asking a difficult question. Maybe I need to express my ideological position about the Independence Day celebration. I think independence means emancipation. And to me, it must mean not only political emancipation, but it must also mean economic emancipation. In that sense, there is no need to expend a lot of money into any so-called celebration, as we saw during the times we were growing up. State budget being channeled towards spending some, if you like, thousands of dollars or millions of Ghana cedis injected into Independence Day. I think the celebration must be done, but it must be done in such a way that there will be lectures, seminars, symposia. Symposia. You have programs across the country as it concerns the Heritage Month. So there could be conferences and seminars, different conferences and seminars in different institutions of learning to reinvigorate ourselves, to discuss the African and the Ghanaian epiphany, our sense of knowledge of ourselves, our culture, our heritage, where we have come from, where we are, and where we are going. We could begin to develop some white papers to give some direction to how the state is being governed, the public's expectation about the country, and the youth expectation about the country, the expectation of stakeholders, and what we can do with respect to the next year. So we could have models, we could have ideas that could be presented, finally, if you like, to say Parliament or to the executive head, the president. And it becomes a national project for the next year. And that project can be actualized by the next March, so that little money is spent in the entire celebration. The recent one was done at the Jubilee House, right? The Flagstaff House.
Yes.
Beautiful. For me, it mimics the fact that Ghana has had independence. Nkrumah said the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked to the liberation of the continent. We don't have to parade in our thousands to get others fainting and being sent to the hospital. But we can do something in representation of same, as seen at the Flagstaff House this past March. We can sustain that, replicate that the years ahead of us. During our time, we were sent to march on the street. We marched all over the place. It was good for fitness, but it did not reflect in the pockets of Ghanaians in terms of the economies of things. If we have been liberated, we should begin to talk about economic emancipation. It should be the moment where we talk about the United States of Africa, economic, union, where we can trade amongst ourselves, empower ourselves, and have a common military high command. These are the things we should be talking about. Today, in Africa, we have crisis at the Sahel region. It is because we have micro-independence. Ghana celebrates something, Burkina celebrates something, Nigeria celebrates something. But how would all these celebrations crystallize into something momentous that will change the destinies of the citizens of the continent, and for that matter, Ghana? So fundamentally, during our times, there was some sense of euphoria, some sense of excitement. Independence celebration. Ghana, every 6 months, we're excited. Do we still have the same excitement today? No. And I think that if we don't get emancipated economically, and we continue to trek back and forth to the IMF, back and forth, oscillating between IMF and the Bretton Woods institution, the World Bank, IMF, and all that, I will tell you, the zest, the euphoria, the excitement will fizzle out, it will die, it will be useless, it will amount to nothing. The only thing that will make it make sense going forward is economic emancipation.
Okay, sir. Even though you've talked about so many things, you've touched on other aspects, but then because of our interview focus and Ghana from the perspective of the youth, I'd want to know what exactly makes we, the youth, deviate in terms of the practice of our culture. What is the deviation? And yes, I know there has been a deviation because you said so already.
Deviation because of the deviation has come about because of, first of all, Christianization. I'm a Christian. I've been a Christian for a very long time. And how the Christian Bible has been interpreted over time. Islamization. And how Islam has been interpreted over time.
So religion.
I'm being specific in the sense of these two major religions. I mean, the extent of their impact on Ghana. See, if you allow me, I will take you to where I started from. Did not start from today. You see, the creation of what we call Salems and boarding schools and all that was to Christianize you. It was not to Christianize you to go to heaven. It was to Christianize you to make you a slave. So that when you talk about Christian missions, there are two layers. Whereas the Christian missions impacted our society and gave us Western education, and we thank God for the Christian missions, fantastic job they did. What was the missing link is that we lost aspects of our Ghanaianness because everything that was close to culture and cultural affinity amounted to heathenism. To the extent that our own medicines, our own herbal medicines amounted to heathenism. And you have preachers, for that matter, Ghanaian preachers, African preachers, who think that herbal medicine represents heathenism. So it's a critical question. It's about how we view the world and how Judo-Christian Islamic influence began to shape our thought and thinking. And several of those early preachers or those who proselytize the gospel, to an extent did damage, because after Christian conversion and baptism and practicing of Christianity, you were told to marry one. I am a man of one wife. But today, Kamala Harris is telling us, right, that a man should sleep with a man and a woman should sleep with a woman in Ghana. These were the people who brought the ram and the cross.
Okay, so please, I'm not cutting your short, but then with you mentioning that Christianity and Islam, Islam, does it mean it shouldn't have been introduced, even though it has been of a great help? But then you taking it from the point that
I'm saying that, and you may want to go and read Bishop Osisapon, whom I have read for some time. I read Bishop Osisapon when I was in primary 5. Ghana in retrospect. I want to tell you this, and I just want to speak to the Ghanaian Christian. Your culture is not demonic, and I want to lay emphasis on that. Anyway, I've been a preacher since the age of 13, and I can address Ghanaians on religion. You see, it's very shameful that today, if there is a festival in your hometown and you decide to go, you are an idol worshiper. Once you're a Christian, you are an idol worshiper. But do you understand festival? Yes, so you see, the danger is that it's a difficult subject matter. It is a very difficult subject matter. A very, very difficult. Today we sit here, we are talking about the youth deviation.
Yes, the culture.
Look, in Ghana month, I want to give credit to and maybe applaud Archbishop. What's the name of this gentleman? This evangelist. Archbishop Aginasari. I want to commend him because he's doing great. Because his church is really doing Ghana month. Recently, I had my television on before I left for church. I think last week Sunday or so. I think they were at the middle belt. They had reached the middle belt. And so members of his church who are from that area were doing presentation in the church. And they talked about marriage and how marriage, right, is contracted within their culture. This is what the church should be doing. When Father Abraham, right, sent Eliezer to pardon Aram, Mesopotamia. We talk about Mesopotamia. That's where Father Abraham comes from. That's his original hometown. Right? To go and find a wife. It was custom he was doing. It was custom. It was custom. And when he went there, having prayed to the God of, the new God he had found, if you like, Yahweh, he went and he found Sister Becky at the well.
Rebecca.
Okay, maybe, you want to say Rebecca, but Ghanaians know her as Becky. Found her, and marriage ceremony took place. Marriage ceremony, not wedding, not people, as you are doing today, not wedding. Today, you, the youth nowadays, say the guy did not allow me to wear white gown and all that. Absolutely nonsensical.
So you condemn.
First of all, it had I did so. First of all, it had nothing.
No, sir, please can we come back? You are saying that.
Let me finish my flow, then you come.
Yes,
no, you cut my flow.
You will come in. I want to cut you. But then
you're already cutting my flow.
No, sir.
I will lose my thought on this one.
No, I'm not doing that in any way. But then with the white wedding, can you
I'm still on it. I'm still on the white wedding.
Because you made mention of the fact that the youth.
Yeah, so I want to finish on that. That's exactly what I'm doing.
Okay.
Right? People. The guy, you are not even a dead body. Why are they blowing on? The guy did not give me 10,000, 50,000 Ghana cedis, wedding dress.
Yes.
The bridesmaids, they are 20. They all want to wear wine or something, indigo or violet or something.
Yeah.
The seamstress or the designer is charging as much as 10,000. He's going for low. And when you marry and you do all these things, that is not the marriage. The marriage is what happened between the two families.
The traditional wedding week.
It is what happened between the two families. It is that marriage God is involved, not the one you did in church.
Okay.
Not the one you did in church. The one when the two families came together, your culture.
Yes.
My sister, your culture. The one the two families married. And before the marriage, when you meet and you say you are interested in each other, and the family is giving notice, they do what we call background checks.
Yes.
Here you meet and you are by the walls at night like Lisa. You're already preparing what we call nkunyane. You are preparing food. The man has not married you yet. The boy cannot even, he doesn't have more than 2 trousers. You are preparing food for him.
That's absolutely wrong. Maybe you don't want to.
Let me finish. You are preparing food for him. Whilst he's not even married to you. The money which has been expended on you by your parents, you are preparing kunyane for this guy. When I was a student, I saw one lady doing that. You will be holding basket with the food in there, and we'll go and serve the guy. Okay. But those days, we will do investigation to check whether the family you are marrying into, there are no armed robbers there.
Okay.
Okoto one woman, my sister. We want to know whether there are armed robbers in your family. We want to ascertain whether there are no busy, your family is not, noted for busybodying. Too much busybodying, gossips. We are checking to ascertain whether this family, you should indeed marry into it. Marry is silver.
Can we?
We would have finished it. So the white wedding and all those things, I find it, the expenditure that goes into it and all that, very nauseating. It doesn't represent our culture. True. It is a Western ambushment. And some preachers have gullibly, sheepishly followed this. And I think that we must begin to relook at our theology. Theology is the study of God. How we have studied God, understood Him, and our relationship with Him. As Africans, we have a way we relate with God. That is why we beat drums and dance here in church. We dance bobo in church. Because when we do that, our God comes quickly. Yeah. The white may do with him, and they're okay. But here, when we beat our drums and dance in church, we begin to jump here and there. We catch the measure of God's power. This is where charismatism is. And that is why when our African brethren in the Gold Coast were sent across the Atlantic, they were singing the Negro spiritual songs. This is where revival is. It didn't come from the West.
Sir, can we talk about how we can bring all of these back? Because it's obvious we are deviating.
We have deviated for a very long time.
So how do we bring this back?
We have deviated for a very long time.
Imbibe this.
And the churches and the Muslims, the Sunni, the Ahmadiyya, the Tijaniya, the Charismatics, the Pentecostals, right?
Yes.
The Orthodox and all those groups should understand that when they are preaching the gospel, we have what we call hermeneutics. Hermeneutics, the context of society. And if they are studying Paul and quoting Paul, they should not misquote him. Context of society. Societal context. If societal context is missing, you have preached no Bible. You are a charlatan. It doesn't matter your degrees in the pulpit. The context of society matters. That's what we call hermeneutics. The question about interpretation, the question about scripture being written, first of all, to the original audience, and how that same text applies to the context of a local audience, different from the original audience. These things are very important. And how the Western forces and powers have used the cloth of religion to take away the powers of Africans, both economically, socially, and spiritually. It is very dangerous. And so, I dare say, if you come, I've been a preacher for years, if you come to the church I pastor, you see that this is indeed an African Christian church. Power is there. Because the absence of that doesn't make it an African Christian church. It's as simple as that. This is who we are as Africans. This is who we are as Ghanaians. Indeed, Jesus doesn't come from Europe. The gospel also did not come from Europe in the first instance. You remember in Acts of Apostles, the question about the Ethiopian Enoch.
Okay.
That Middle Eastern encounter he had with Philip, he also came back to Ethiopia with the gospel. Remember, the Middle Eastern region, today you talk about Egypt, we make reference to it as North Africa, but it's part of the Middle East also.
Okay.
So largely, when you look at the topography of the gospel, it is not the West that should teach us who God is and who Christ is. And we need to understand that. And so you cannot interpret the gospel from the lens of an European preacher. That is very dogmatic, sheepish, and shameful. Right? And so where we are, if we want the youth to come to orthodoxy, who we are as Ghanaians and our culture, there must be a revival. And what I mean by revival is a cultural revival, a cultural renaissance. And that is what we need.
So many politicians have been trying to define the history of Ghana. Can we know the fact? How do we know that this is factual? Because we were not there.
Yes. You and I were not there.
Yes.
We are quoting Dr. Mahmoud Baumia. You and I were not there.
We were not there. We were not there. So how do we know the factual?
Yeah, history deals with facts. Indeed. You are taking me into historiography. It's a difficult subject, but I'll try. I mean, fundamentally, a lot of our histories are written by the Arabic sources, and that's for the benefit of religion. Sure. A lot of same were also passed on orally to us. But we should understand that a lot of the cultures and societies have subsisted over time. Whether you want to view it from the Guans or you want to view it from the Akans or the Molidabans, the Yebes, the Gans, and the various ethnicities and ethnic groups in this country. We know that our histories are not blurred. That apart from the Guans being referred to as the Autochthonous people, several of these groups that settled from the ancient empires, settled at least some at the Pra River Basin area, began to move. I mean, I'm an Adansi, I'm an Asante, but also specifically an Adansi. The people groups began to move to various areas, especially among the Akan groups and other territories. The fundamental ethos of the discussion is that these people groups were led either by spiritual leaders, right? Or warriors, for that matter. In the case of the Fantes, you can make reference to the Obuman Komauda Pejan and also. And then you can also look at the other spiritual leaders that led, especially the Adambis and the others, right? Also coming into the fold. So largely, even among the Gans, you have spiritual leaders and all that. You go to the non-centralized areas within the northern upper regions, you also find the Tindanes and the Tendanes and all that. So spiritual overlords and political overlords emerge within the sphere. Chieftaincy becoming a primacy of our judgment. Leadership from these traditional leaders subsisted prior to the European involvement within their territories. At least by the turn of the 15th century, we have seen a lot of European movements. But prior to that, we have had the trans-Saharan interactions, right? So that slavery, slave contact had already taken place even through the Saharan regions and all to the other parts of the world. But as we see, with the coming of the Atlantic, the making of ships, technology, open the gates for seafaring and traveling and all that. The Azambujas and the various groups making their way to find new territories and all that. We were not discovered by the Western people. We were not a territory discovered. If you come to discuss the origin of the human species, right, you would understand that the first Homo sapiens or Homo erectus per the research of Dr. and Mrs. Leakey at the Adu-Gyamfi Gorge in northern Tanzania. You find that traces are made to Africa to make reference to the origin of the human species. Fundamentally, as a people group, we build civilizations. In fact, the flame of science lit in the Middle Eastern region, Egypt, for example, some 10,000 years ago, before the Grecians, Herodotus and the others will come and imbibe technology about building and all that. In fact, Herodotus one time talks about the fact that the pyramids that were built, I think of the Giza one, so were built by people over 100,000 strong. And this was done with no sicknesses like dysentery and all. So knowledge about public health and all that have subsisted within our regions. The first universities emerging around not only the ones you find in Egypt, but also in Timbuktu and all. So knowledge transmission and all that has showed that in our existence, we have been a people group. Various kingdoms emerge. One of it you find in the case of the Gold Coast as the Asante Kingdom. That spread as far as to even the Cote d'Ivoire area and as far as Gonjaland in the upper regions. The frontiers of the Asante Kingdom spread even beyond the borders of this country. The European encounters with us, right, especially by the turn of the 19th century, where we began to have extreme encounters in terms of war. Asante British wars subsisted from the 1820s up to 1901, where the post-Yasantua War, right? Several of which saw the sack of Kumasi twice, the 1874 one being the most popular one. I mean, resistance against European encroachment across the sub-region, across Africa, was really enormous. In the case of the Gold Coast, you find, for example, King Agri of Cape Coast, who was later, if you like, exiled and to Sierra Leone and was brought back as a private citizen with ill health and was put on stipend. In the case of Asante, we saw various warrior kings resisting European encroachment. In fact, the last one you find in 1896 when Prempeh the First was sent across to Seychelles, through Sierra Leone, to Seychelles. Largely, we saw our chiefs leading the crusades and fighting and all that. Yes, by these events, right, occurred before the 20th century. By the turn of the 20th century, when there was a foothold of the entire, British foothold, for example, of the entire territories, the northern territories becoming a protectorate, Asante being annexed, the coastal regions being annexed earlier, somewhere around 1844. We see that the broader enclaves had been now colonially defined, with British administrators strongly enforcing the indirect rule system. The indirect rule system saw many things. By 1916 onward, we began to see the Clifford Constitution and all that. By the time we came to the Benz Constitution, we are seeing different reforms coming up and all. So fundamentally, this resistance continued and saw youth movement emerge, especially in the, if you like, in the interwar period, the First World War and the post-First World War era saw a lot of ideals which are subsisted in the earlier period, like the Gaveist movement and Dubois conception of African emancipation and all that, being pushed by several Africans like Kwame Nkrumah and the others who had had a stint, for example, attending conferences in UK and the US and all that. By the 1940s, we had begun to see radical nationalism, especially the post-Second World War, right? This is leading up to 1948, where we would have several states emerging across. You will see Israel, for example, emerging out of the formation of the UN, and also some legislative instruments allowing for the establishment of Israel, having interesting leaders, including Golda Meir and the others emerging. But in the case of the Gold Coast, you saw a revival. So the UGCC emerged, right? The UGCC was formed by Pa Grant, a businessman. Credit must be given to him, not to David Dankwa and the others. The UGCC belongs to Pa Grant. Let me emphasize. The UGCC belongs to Pa Grant. Indeed, this radical nationalist activity which took place came on the back of pockets of nationalist sentiments that are taking place in the earlier period, like the National Congress of British West Africa. We have seen other youth movements, right, within Accra and all. But you also saw that on the back of this youth movement were also citizens' participation that was seeking for change, right? So we had Ghanaian soldiers going to war, fighting side by side the Europeans. Several Ghanaian preachers were emerging into pulpits. The earlier period was the mixed race Christian protest. That's an earlier period. But at least by 1940s, there were different revivals emerging, right? Different African elites who had a stint, including the Nkrumahs, had returned back home and were playing their role. But the chiefs had not gone to sleep. They were active, right? And they continued to play a role. Upon Prempeh's return, he did not come to sleep. When Prempeh II was installed, he did not also sleep. The coming together of the Asante-Man Shemu again, after the return of Prempeh, also reinvigorated many things. So there was some sense of revival within the state. Ni Kwabena Boni in Greater Accra, another vociferous king or chief, for that matter, was also very key and active, right? So across the regions of this country, chiefs were still active, even though they had their own challenges in the earlier period with the educated elites who would go and drink tea, sip tea, and return with no business to push for independence. The first of its kind, the Fante Amembu Feku, which was more an ethnic based, what we refer to as the Fante Confederation or Fante Confederacy, had already come before the Aborigines Sword Protection Society. They had a stint abroad to make demands, right? Questions about the land bills and all that, right? But these were pockets of efforts, but they were not what we say nationalist in character. But the economic forces at the time within the post-war period, the return of these soldiers who were disgruntled, the challenges with cocoa farming, swollen shoe disease and all that, increasing cost of living, inflation, questions about shortage of goods and all that, were already setting the stage up. Now, around this time, Nkrumah had been invited to be part of the UGCC, which was willing to work with, what do you call it, the British administration for a longer period before power will be handed over to us. It wouldn't have happened any day. Let no Ghanaian be deceived. That independence would have come the way it came if Nkrumah's CPP had not been formed. Self-government now. It was this ideological challenge, right, within the UGC itself that made the UGC suffer some implosion that gave birth to the CPP. Okay, anyhow. So the point I'm making is that Ghana's radical politics leading to independence did not come about by the UGC. It's a lie. It came about as a result of a concerted effort of all Ghanaians. But I want to emphasize that it came about on 6th March 1957 because of Kwame Nkrumah. Not because of the UGCC. A country that refuses to celebrate its heroes is not worth dying for. Nkrumah will not share a place with others. Nkrumah leads them all. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yes, so
in fact, he is the Moses that midwifed Ghana through the Red Sea, what is also referred to as the Red Sea. But for the coup d'etat, I'm sure no matter his shortcomings, he would have given us a Joshua who would have taken us over the Jordan. Post-1966 coup d'etat has led to our common ill fate today.
That's history. Very insightful. Bringing this conversation to an end, Professor, we want to know, we as I'm part of them, so I'll say we, what do we do? What should we do to bring
Read African literature? I'm charging Ghanaian students to read African literature and not to read European novels. When my big sister, whom I call big sister, who and that I call her big sister, and she calls me small brother. When his father, Chinua Achebe, wanted to break through with his right, we went through a lot of challenges. When Walter Rodney wrote How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, he struggled because he could not get the so-called gatekeeping publishers to publish his work. These several torchbearers, the Chinua Achebes, the Wole Soyinkes, and the others, put up a fight for us to today have, my contemporaries like Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie and the others write. Ama Ata Edus of Ghana and the others have also blazed the trail. Professor Anidoho, right, the one who died, at Kenya. Great poets and writers have done great deeds, writing to reflect our culture and who we are.
Very true.
Severally, we have been told to construe our research from European persuasion and thinking. And when you study linguistics or history or whatever, you are swayed to read European scholars. And when you dare to produce grounded theory from African proverb, the gullible African intellectual who learned from the West says you are wrong. How sheepish we are. I dare the African youth to read the African literature. And the African literature, he must read. And that is the only way out.
That is the only way out. Thank you so much, sir, for doing this with us. Right. Very insightful. That was a very insightful conversation with Professor Samuel Adu-Gyamfi, a history lecturer at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. I am Linda Ayesu. Follow Focus FM 94.3 FM on all social media handles at Focus FM KNUST.